Does practice really make perfect? Well, today's video may look like it's a music video. It's actually not. Today I want to explore with you a really important concept called deliberate practice, and I'm just using my music as a vehicle for it to make it perhaps a little bit more interesting. And the concept of a deliberate practice is something that we can apply to the things that we're working on in our lives that can help improve our results and how much time it takes us to get there, as well as deepen our experience of the process, and as a result, providing an opportunity for greater fulfillment in our activities. So I hope you'll come join me, so come on in. Hey everybody, good morning. Cheryl Kane here with a sort of an approach to life and things that we want to get better at. And it's this idea of deliberate practice. So this morning the first impulse was to sit down and do some finger exercises. And then I went, oh wait, maybe I could share this. And so now about 20 minutes later, I'm all set up here, and things have shifted a little bit, because when I picked up the guitar, it's tuned in a non-standard tuning, and the song is called Seasons by Chris Cornell. So instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm applying this concept of deliberate practice to shaking the rust off my fingertips, my chops, my riffs, my technique, as well as my familiarity with the neck. And then I'll weave that into applying that in other areas of life and creativity. On the Dharma path, which is I'm going to apologize if I'm going to get some of the subtle, more specific details wrong, but it's a Hindu script. It's ancient text. I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 years old, on basically how to live a life of purpose and how to feel fulfilled no matter what you're navigating. And as someone who spent most of her childhood into teen years pretty much being told nothing happens until you spend 2 hours at that piano practicing classical piano, practice and applied practice is something I'm very familiar with. And the difference that's made on the Dharma path between just practicing and deliberate practice is that in some cases, practice could be perceived or applied as we're just going to keep repeating and eventually we'll get it right. And typically that doesn't always work. But also, there was a time when I lived in the Bay Area in California that I was very active in an organization called the Society for Creative Anachronism. At one point, I really loved the medieval armored combat, and I was being courted by a few different knights. And one of the reasons that I chose to squire to the knight that I did is that he had a saying, or a philosophy, a motto, a mantra, whatever you want to call it, which was, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And the word perfect can be a little bit charged, but I think the point here is that perfect is another word for deliberate. The idea is that you're trying to perfect your skill, or trying to perfect your expression, or try to get to where the number of mistakes that you make when you're playing a song like Seasons becomes less. We're human, we're going to make mistakes, right? But with deliberate practice, the point here is that we don't just go, oh, I made a mistake, and keep going. that we stop and practice that portion that is hanging us up. Maybe play a little bit leading into it, maybe a little bit going back. In fact, my first piano teacher, what she taught was at some point you start working your way backwards through the piece of music. So, because what'll happen is we'll get to a place where it's the stuff at the end that we're still stumbling with, and the stuff at the beginning just keeps getting practiced over and over and over again. And so when we go back, then we can start working on the places that we are still getting the muscle memory for, right? Whatever that may be, art, singing, guitar, dance, choreography. And so the idea is, for example, with this song, Seasons, I've pretty much got the first few parts down. There's like 4 or 5 different guitar parts. Like here's the opening. Oh wait, my hair's gonna get in the way of my strings. Now see, there's a spot where I can get hung up. Part of the reason is that on this guitar, I have everything is really compressed and I don't have a cutaway. And so getting to this it involves me really moving my body. It's not that I don't know how to make this sounds. Whoops. Here. And so if I were to look at this and go, gosh, that time I missed it, other times I make it. And then when I tried to do it again, I missed it. And so rather than just plowing on, I would stop and go, all right, when I do it, when I'm able to play it smoothly, I can do it. Technically, I know how to do it, right? I have the dexterity in my fingers and the feel in my body. And so what is happening when I miss that? And so there's a transition point from now see, that time I did it. So the question becomes, what was different there? And so this is the next layer in deliberate practice. I could just sit there and keep going over it and over and over it until at some point I think I'm just tired of it. Part of the measure, if you will, no pun intended, from my piano teacher was when you can play it 3 times in a row without making a mistake, then you can move on. When you're working on a particular section or specific piece or technique, right? So if my goal is to get it right 3 times in a row so I can move on, then the question becomes, what am I doing different there than what's happening when I'm playing the rest of the song? And so the first thing that comes to mind for me is, all right, all of this is generally, first of all, my hand doesn't have to move this way much because I'm playing the same strings. All I'm having to do is move up and down the neck. The angle of my hand in the attitude of my hand, if you will, it doesn't have to shift to change those chords. But when I come here, what I'm noticing is that I have to really turn my wrist and get into those chords. And what's important there is I'm having to be really intentional, at least for now, until I get the muscle memory around, hey, I'm just, I I can dance and do this part. And that time I kind of got it. But I think that what I'm finding here, and it's being really cool actually sharing this video with you because it is making me more deliberate in my practice, is that for a time, I think the difference for me will be to put more attention when I get to that transition point so that I can I can improve my chances of playing it cleanly and correctly. And there's some variations. I like to make it a slide the whole way. I like that versus I just like that little, it makes me dig into the guitar just playing just a little bit more, right? So here's, I don't know if you can see it, but here's my hand position. I've got to bring my thumb around and get my wrists like really underneath the neck to get under there. Okay, that's two, right? And that's three. Yay! Now, that was done in isolation. And I've already identified that part of the challenge is that I'm having to make a really big shift in my hand on the guitar neck from, the first 8 measures. And so what I would do then is I might choose to not start at the whole beginning of the intro, but just that last phase here. Kind of stomped on the E string there. So we'll try it again, right? But you see what the difference that can make on I think at the end of the day, when we can be more deliberate in our approach to the things we're working on in life, that we'll see results sooner. And that sense of progress, that sense of getting somewhere and actually feeling like you're getting better, or catching on, it fuels our fire, it fuels our energy, especially if we have a tendency to judge or to criticize, or there's an element to picking up a new instrument or learning a new song that brings up thoughts of I'm not good enough, or it's not okay to make a mistake, or people are gonna think I suck. And so the message here is to, in anything you're trying to bring into your life or shift in your life, do differently, is to look at it in bite-sized pieces and pick one, pick the place where you're getting hung up the most and focus on that, right? If you're trying to change the way you eat, going wholesale and just saying, I'm going plant-based, then, if we just go, all right, I'm going to change all of it, we've taken on a huge, overwhelming task. So start with changing one thing. Start with learning what's in your food. Start with cleaning out your cabinets. That's being deliberate in something that you're trying to change. If you want to be exercising more, then an example of deliberate practice would be first looking at the places that might get in your way. What's hanging you up? Much like, this is downloading right now, you guys, this is awesome. What's hanging you up in that transition from not exercising to not exercising at all, or getting out the door? But look at it and go, okay, how can you make it, where are the obstacles that you can remove? And, in any kind of artistic endeavor, if you want to learn how to paint, one of the first places is just how do you hold the brush in different ways? And I'm running out of ideas because I was up at 1:30 in the morning. And this is, again, a very spontaneous, unscripted, inspired video that actually has some new content or ideas in it. So I am going to I'll play for you the different parts. I'm not going to sing it this morning. It's too early, and but I'll play you the different parts. So this is the first part. Here's the second part. And that goes on for quite a while. You got a verse, you've got a chorus, and another verse. And then here's the third part. This is on the second chorus. And then there's a little bridge. The bridge has two parts, so I'm going to put them together, part 4 and part 5. That's the bridge. And then it goes back to this part. And that's really pretty much the whole song. I mean, the other pieces get pulled back in. There's some acapella-ish, not acapella, but falsetto parts. And it's super fun to play. I want to put a big thank you out to YouTuber extraordinaire Rick Beato for, first, the tribute he did the day that the news broke that Chris Cornell had passed. And then he did, basically, he and a good friend of his played seasons. His friend sang and Rick played guitar. But evidently there was a huge response to that. People going, will you show us how to play it? Will you show us how to play it? And he doesn't typically do that, but he did. And I learned 90% of the songs I knew before the advent of the internet. I learned them by ear. And sometimes you just want to be like, hey, there's a song. And I invite anyone who is considering starting to play guitar to not rely on YouTube solely. I think some basic technique, perhaps, some cheats on how to actually play how the song goes, like what are the chords, and play along with the songs, play along with the music, find people to play with, because one of the things they can't teach on YouTube, I don't believe, is feel, right? This is how. There's a story, Nuno Bettencourt tells the story of getting an opportunity to go meet his hero, Eddie Van Halen. And he's in there and Eddie Van Halen's doing some stuff, and then Eddie goes, hey, I want to test these settings, will you play my rig? And Nuno's going, oh my God, I get to play Eddie Edwards' rig? I'm gonna finally sound like Edward Van Halen. And so he picks it up and he starts playing, and he did not sound like Edward Van Halen, even though he refers to him as Edward, and I think it's a sign of respect. But even though it's set to all the settings, it's Eddie's guitar, Eddie's amps, Eddie's pedals, he did not sound like Eddie Van Halen, even though he knows a lot of the Eddie Van Halen riffs. Right? And what he had to say about that, and I agree 100%, is that at the end of the day, it's what's happening here. What is the transmission from your brain, your heart, your gut into the instrument? And that's something that no one can teach. And if you fixate too much on what's being demonstrated in videos, you're all in your head, and music is not in the head. While songwriting can tend to be conscious, and we're constructing and painting a painting, but in sound, the impulse, right? The place that those choices come from, right? The place that the ideas come from, and then we make a choice, whether we're going to keep it or toss it, comes from our heart. It comes from our soul, even from our gut. So, deliberate practice, be willing to be messy, and play along with the songs that you love. All right. Thank you so much. I'm Cheryl Kane. I'm still working my way through my format here in my YouTube videos, and I appreciate you being here and sharing this journey with me and being curious about what it is that I have to say. And I hope that in some way it inspires you to follow the calling of your heart. Bye now.